everyone, this is a psychic prediction video on South Africa. So this was requested by someone a while ago, and I decided that I should do it now because, there's news coming out about South Africa lately with Donald Trump in the White House, and I believe it was the president of South Africa that went to the White House and had a discussion with him. You can watch it. It's interesting. But anyways, I had done a previous psychic prediction on South Africa where I previously said that it looked like there was fighting in the country that was going to increase. And that was at the end of 2023. I think it was September 2023 when I said that. So basically, when I look this up in the news, what I see is that there's been an increase in murders, rapes, and armed robberies. Since then, that's just been kind of escalating in South Africa, unfortunately. There has been also an increase in unemployment, protests against poor housing and basic rights not being met, as well as racial issues and the LGBTQ discrimination and violence as well that's taking place. So previously I'd said that I was seeing protests and fights and people throwing things and there being an opposing side to the right, which I interpreted to be because there's not really a country to the right of South Africa, so I interpreted it to be the country to the furthest right above them. But now that I look back on that, I believe that the concept of them being opposed to the right is more of a kind of, well, not metaphor, but basically not like literally to the right, but fighting the right, which is the division between the accusations coming now from Donald Trump saying that there is a genocide towards white people taking place in Africa, and the I believe president of Africa kind of had a little bit of a disagreement about that, and then he turned on a TV and played some very interesting things in the White House, which I'm just gonna say you should look up yourself if you haven't seen it yet. It just recently happened. So anyways, I also said there would be flooding in the area, and I looked that up, and apparently there's been an increase in flooding since that happened. That's actually been displacing people and becoming a very rough situation for many people in South Africa, apparently. I think this is also kind of all around the world, but regardless, when I was reading South Africa, it showed up for South Africa, even though it's probably more than just South Africa. But anyways, I had predicted these challenging situations lasting until around 2026, back in 2023 when I made that prediction. And after 2026, I was seeing there being a long period of peace in South Africa. And since I've done a second reading now on this second prediction, which I'm about to get to, I also saw a very similar thing. And keep in mind, when I did my second prediction, I didn't even remember the first prediction that I made. So this was like a clean slate, and I actually had to go back and look at what I previously said to compare notes. So another thing I said previously was that there would be a leader that could be shot and killed, and this leader would be replaced by a new leader who doesn't allow crime to continue in the country, basically implying that there's a lot of criminality and whatnot that's unchecked that later on could be more controlled and this could reduce a lot of bloodshed in the future. And again, this was, before any of what's going on now happened, so that context wasn't there for me to understand what was going on. So you can go ahead and watch that video, the previous prediction video, if you want. I'll put that link below this video in the description. Moving on to the prediction that I just recently did. This may be slightly different, but basically saying the same thing, maybe from a different perspective, you could say. But let's go ahead and get into it. I'm just going to read what I wrote because I did my meditation, I tuned into it, and I just kind of wrote down what was coming to me as it came to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and read that to you. I see kids throwing things in protests. It looks chaotic there. It looks like the government knows they can only do so much, so they don't try to control everything. This is due to not having enough resources to control the public. There is a different culture there than what we know in the Western countries. People have power over the government, and people don't care too much what the government says or does. As opposed to here where, you have to be careful what you do, you're going to get in trouble. I'm not saying that people don't get in trouble in South Africa ever, just that, here it's like if you commit a crime, someone might call the cops, where it seems like there that could definitely happen depending on the crime, but there may be a lot more people who side with you, and you may be able to get away with a lot more, especially if there's a giant group of people who decide to not follow the rules, basically. Continuing on, the people know they outnumber the government, and if the public doesn't cooperate with the government, then the government doesn't have a whole lot of say over many of these social movements going on, which could lead to violence. It does seem as though this is changing slowly, though. That is moving forward here. It looks like the government will start being more and more in control of the people and social movements. Again, I kind of got the similar thing in the previous reading related to a leader being taken out. That was not the president, but a different leader. So either way, it showed up this time, but I didn't get that there would be someone killed necessarily, like a leader. It would just happen for just kind of naturally. But it could be, I'm not saying that it's not that, I'm just saying it didn't show up in the second reading as the reason why. It doesn't mean that it's not there, just because I didn't see it. I do see Trump's face as if he will have some sort of major impact on this over the next 2 months or so. And, he is kind of making a big deal about it and making it big news right now as far as the, what would you call that? That would be racial tensions going on there. Anyways, it seems a lot of things will start working out for him, that being Donald Trump, better in the next 2 months or so. And for some reason, the next 2 months seem like a big deal. It's not necessarily 2 months, it could be 3, but probably around 2 or so from now. It's currently the end of May, going on June almost. So some of the things that I've talked about on my Patreon page that are shifting significantly are the situation with Ukraine and Russia. Again, as I've said many times, I don't see it completely ending, even if there is a peace deal, even if the governments are no longer officially fighting each other. I do see there continuing to be battles, even if it's, I don't know, military contractor groups or whatever you call them, the groups of people that aren't officially part of the government, but they're like militias or whatever. I still see fighting going on. But anyways, it does seem like in the next 2 months there could be something working out more in Donald Trump's favor, as I've predicted and said for a long time, that a lot of Donald Trump's promises are not going to work out, or they're going to be kind of half-assed, was the terminology I used back before 2025 even started. And it seems like some of these things may start to look better for him regarding, well, the economy, the tariff situation, as well as even the India and Pakistan situation. Looks like he, or the U.S., um, could start to improve that better. Actually, last month, I believe it was, in the April, I think it was April psychic prediction video that I posted, I had said that I had brought up Pakistan out of the blue, which I never talk about, but randomly I felt the need to talk about Pakistan. I was just drawn to it for whatever reason. I didn't really know why, but I was sensing that there would be hardship, and then I was seeing that the U.S. for some reason would be involved, and the U.S. would kind of help the situation become better. So, again, I'm not trying to play into politics here. I'm just saying what I sensed before I even understood the context of what it was. So there's that. Things seem to be improving in the next 2 months for Donald Trump. That's kind of a side note, but it was relevant to this situation too. So, anyways, back to what I was reading for the prediction for South Africa. It seems like there is a lot of commotion going on in South Africa for the next 1.5 years or so. So previously, in the previous prediction for South Africa, I had said about in the next couple years or so, which would be 2026. But this now I'm kind of seeing like it may be 2026, 2027 or so, maybe a little later than 2026 possibly, um, where all this kind of chaos in South Africa starts to calm down. So moving on, it looks like a lot of chaos and gangs and violence. There is a starving out of resources to these gangs. In other words, they're kind of, there's a lot of criminal activity feeding off of the resources, but it's like the resources kind of dissipate, so there's not really much for them to feed off of, which prevents them from basically continuing on. This seems like it could be related to a lack of resources for everyone there in general, and so stealing and criminal behavior just doesn't pay off very well compared to other places. Things seem to calm down, and people live off the land for a good long while. Now, going back on the previous prediction video that I did in 2023, I also said people were producing things and sending them out, and I was seeing things like clay pots and things like that. So that's kind of living off the land in a sense, you could say. So there's a lot of collaboration between both readings here. Around the previous one I stopped at 2027, and I had a request to go further past 2027. So here we are. Basically, it just seems like things become very peaceful for a good long while. But what came up this time was around 2031 or so. I get the sense of something big happening, which seems like an attack or a war of some sort. It seems unprovoked. I get the sense of this involving British people attacking them. Now, previously I had said that I got the sense of like Western countries kind of working with South Africa more, like in the far future, but also despite the whole thing with them being part of BRICS and working with China and Russia and whatnot, regardless, it was like more like a cohesive cooperation, even though there was that division, but the division became less, is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, that was a little different from this reading. This reading, what showed up was British people attacking them. I wrote, but it might not be Britain as a country. I don't think it was necessarily like British people as in the country, um, but more so just it has people that reminded me of British people. That was just the sense I got about it. It seems like there are ships looking for resources in the ocean, and South Africa is somehow blocking them. This seems like kind of like a legal situation, like just not legally allowing them to do something, blocking them from getting what they need. And I got the sense that they were pretty desperate about getting what they needed, as if, I don't know, maybe they're starving, running out of food, and they're fishing or something. I don't know what it was they're trying to get out of the water. It could be rocks, minerals. I don't know. Just something they're trying to get out of the water. Um, and so, because they're being blocked, they attack with an explosion somewhere in the middle of South Africa. Again, this was around 2031, pretty far in the future. And the further you go forward, the more variables of change there are, because the future is malleable. Part of the whole point, part of the joy of getting a psychic prediction is that then you can change it. That's the whole point of it on some level. Although for bigger scenarios like this, some of it is less changeable, but you can still change where you stand within that future outcome. Even if you can't change the core of the outcome, you can still change aspects of it. So, what I'm trying to say is it might not be 2031, it could be way further into the future, and it's also possible that this whole timeline can shift and this wouldn't even happen. But regardless, this is the sense that I'm getting, so you can take it for whatever it's worth. And this is true with any psychic prediction that you get from any psychic, just so you know. This seems to create a tense conflict which could last a couple years, but after about 3 years it seems to fade away. So it would be like 2034 or so. I do see many injured people missing limbs in South Africa though. After that, I also sense China working much more with South Africa. It seems like the country could prosper a lot from mutual relationship. And again, this showed up both times, with South Africa really networking with other countries and this becoming very beneficial, although I also see this being a general trend with all countries around the world in general. Around 2034 or so, there could be some land loss due to rising ocean levels in South Africa. So that's interesting because in the previous prediction, I also said flooding. And so I don't really know what's going on in the news regarding the flooding. I just did a super quick search. But maybe there's more going on than I understand, because it does seem like, I was getting rising ocean levels like taking some of the land. So maybe there's a lot of land erosion going on. I don't really know what's going on in the news in South Africa around that, but regardless, that's what was showing up. So it could be kind of a slow trickle that's already started potentially with the flooding. It seems there is a lot of Earth changes around that time, around 2034, but specifically around 2038, which is the year I singled out in my predictions on Patreon way back, where I had been, I still make hundreds of crypto predictions. I don't know, maybe I've got 1,000 by now. Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. Done a lot of crypto coin predictions, and they all seem to be very commonly the year 2038 was showing up as a year where they fluctuate a lot, and it can go down a bunch or go up a bunch around that year. And so I tuned into that year, and I got the sense that this is the year that there could be some serious worldwide problems with the Earth, and it was kind of confusing exactly what was going on, but basically it basically technology is involved in some way, but also I was getting the sense of just like desert, what is the word, desertification or whatever the word is, where the land becomes more like a desert, and things don't grow as well. So that could be a problem. So, anyways, you can read more about that on my Patreon page if you're interested in the year 2038. I will also leave a link to that below this video in the description if you want to check that out. It's free to join. Um, and if you want to read the paid tier posts and videos, then you can join with a free trial as well, and just cancel it within a week and you will not get charged. Very easy to cancel. Anyways, continuing on, it looks like some of the land is taken over by what seems like pirate gangs of the sea around that time frame. Again, this is something that I've seen especially for European countries, and many of my predictions for many different countries, which most of those recent ones involving that are on my Patreon page as well. But basically, it looks like trade becomes a big deal. I've been saying this since before the tariffs. Like, I've been saying this way before the tariffs. I've been saying this since before the Keystone Pipeline exploded, and I was talking about how there's going to be a lot of issues with trade and natural resources such as the gas pipeline, but also within that ocean area, um, and also just all around Europe, but also spreading just throughout the whole planet as well, as far as trade becoming a big deal in the next decade or a couple decades or so. Anyways, the government has to flee to the north. The government of South Africa, I was seeing around like 2034, 2038 or so, having to flee to the north of the country with a lot of the people to survive due to these like pirate gangs that were basically taking over. As crazy as that sounds, but that's what I've been seeing a lot for a lot of different places. The pirate gang organizations live among the islands that are like formed islands due to the sinking land. Some of the land stays above the water, forming islands in South Africa. Little small islands. Um, and low water level areas where it is easy to set up anchors and have access to small chunks of land, as long as you don't get your boat stuck, I suppose. South Africa may end up taking some of the land to the north of them. Like, they may basically invade some of those countries a little bit and claim some of that land as their own. They will also network with China and other countries, and some of the leaders of South Africa may actually end up moving to those other countries around 2040. Jumping ahead, 2050, it seems as though South Africa may dissolve into a bigger organization of some sort. In other words, the country kind of just like dissolves away. This is part of the natural shift I am seeing for the whole world, where many countries will be merging into bigger networks and becoming much less independent. It seems by 2050, a good portion of the southern border of South Africa could have been swallowed by the sea. Corporations will take over rather than countries to some extent throughout the whole world, and it will be much less about individual countries battling each other. And in some way, I would say it's more like not so much the corporations take over the countries, but more like the countries they operate more like a corporation than a country in the future. And I've been saying this for a while now, and we're kind of starting to see that happen with a lot of, like Elon Musk and stuff like that. So I think it's gonna head more in that direction. Again, it's positive and negative. I've talked about this before, but there's a natural movement to unify, and then there's also the kind of manipulated movement to unify under centralized power, and they're both happening at the same time. So just to say that, like the concept of one world government, there is a kind of corrupt version of that, but then there's also a natural, more highly evolved, higher consciousness driven version of that as well, and they're both kind of playing out at the same time. So a lot of people are going to point their fingers and say that's bad or evil or whatever, but sometimes it will be and sometimes it won't be. So it's not so cut and dry as what I'm trying to get at here. So anyways, continuing on, regarding the countries becoming more, like, less about borders and things like that, and more about kind of like tracking people and like corporate power. I wrote, instead, it will be more about those who comply with the greater worldwide civilization rather than different countries battling each other, and those who, let me go back. Instead, it will be more about those who comply with the greater worldwide civilization, the unification, and those who prefer to live outside of society in the wilderness. That will be kind of replacing the battle between countries. It is much less violent, but there does seem to be some tension between these two groups of people. And of course, I've talked about that on my Patreon as well as many other things, so you can join my Patreon to learn more about this. But this I wanted to post for free on YouTube because it was requested by someone on YouTube. So thank you for watching, and have a great day. Give this video a thumbs up if you have not yet, and you can always join my Patreon for free. And that's it. Thanks for watching.